Donald Trump didn't just flirt with violating the U.S. Constitution. He took it out back, beat it senseless, and left it bleeding in the gutter. The man who swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the foundational document of American democracy spent years treating it like a cheap casino napkin, scribbling over its sacred clauses with the greasy crayon of his ego. And the MAGA crowd, those red hat crusaders who thump their chests and call themselves constitutionalists, they can't make that claim anymore. Their bloated God King shits on the Constitution so often, they'd need a hazmat suit to wave it around without choking on the stench of their own hypocrisy. Let's rip the mask off and stare down the wreckage he and they left behind. Start with the First Amendment, freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly. Trump didn't just undermine it, he waged a one-man war against it. He called the press the enemy of the people, a phrase that drips with authoritarian venom, echoing tyrants who've silenced dissent with bullets instead of tweets. He didn't just criticize journalists. He threatened to sue them into oblivion, mused about revoking broadcast licenses, and cheered when his rallygoers turned on reporters like a pack of rabid dogs. That's not tough talk. It's a middle finger to the constitutional shield that keeps power accountable. And don't forget his Muslim travel ban. A blatant jab at religious freedom dressed up in flimsy national security excuses. The Supreme Court may have let it slide, but the stench of bigotry clung to it like smoke on a cheap suit. MAGA loves to clutch their pocket constitutions, but when their guy tramples free speech and religion, they're too busy chanting USA to notice. Then there's the Emoluments Clause, that dusty little rule in Article 1, Section 9 meant to keep presidents from pocketing foreign cash. Trump didn't just cross that line, he turned it into a billion-dollar conga line. Saudi princes, Chinese diplomats, and God knows who else funneled money through his hotels and resorts while he grinned from the Oval Office. The Constitution says no foreign gifts without Congress's okay. Trump said, screw that, and kept the profits rolling. His D.C. hotel became a swamp saloon where influence was the drink special, and he was the bartender pouring shots for anyone with a checkbook. The Founding Fathers didn't write that clause for fun. They knew corruption festers when leaders treat the presidency like a personal ATM. Trump proved them right. MAGA, constitutionalists, cheer his business savvy. But if Biden pulled that stunt, they'd be screaming treason from every pickup truck tailgate. Article 2, the executive power section, took a beating too. The faithful execution of laws. Trump executed them like a hitman with a grudge. Look at January 6, 2021, his magnum opus of constitutional desecration. He didn't just egg on a mob to storm the Capitol. He lit the fuse with months of lies about a stolen election, then stood back and watched as they smeared their chaos over the legislative branch. The Constitution demands a peaceful transfer of power. Trump preferred a Molotov cocktail. His second impeachment wasn't some partisan tantrum. It was the system screaming that inciting insurrection isn't a First Amendment hobby. It's a betrayal of the oath he took. MAGA calls it patriotism, waving their flags while their leader torches the very document they claim to revere. Constitutionalists, they're just cultists with better branding. And let's talk checks and balances. Those pesky Articles I and III powers meant to keep the presidency from turning into a monarchy. Trump treated Congress like a doormat and the judiciary like a punching bag. He stonewalled subpoenas, hid his tax returns, and fired inspectors general who dared peek under the hood of his administration. When courts ruled against him, he called them so-called judges and ranted about rigged decisions. The man didn't just dislike oversight, he acted like it was a personal insult to his divine right to rule. The Constitution's separation of powers isn't optional, it's the spine of the republic. Trump tried to snap it. MAGA's drain the swamp battle cry rings hollow when their guy's the one clogging the pipes with his own filth. The 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, he trampled it with glee. His administration's family separation policy at the border, ripping kids from parents as a deterrent, wasn't just cruel. It was a constitutional gut punch to due process and human dignity. His relentless attacks on voting rights, from baseless fraud claims to pushing restrictive laws, aimed to choke the life out of democratic equality. Trump didn't see citizens. He saw winners and losers, and he'd burn the Constitution to ash if it meant his team stayed on top. MAGA screams about law and order, but when their golden calf locks kids in cages and rigs the game, they clap like it's a reality show finale. This isn't hyperbole, it's the record. Trump's tenure was a masterclass in constitutional contempt, a daily assault on the guardrails that keep America from sliding into despotism. He didn't stumble into these violations. He swaggered into them, daring anyone to stop him. And MAGA, those self-proclaimed guardians of the Constitution, can't claim that title while worshiping a man who treats it like toilet paper. They'll wave it at rallies, sure, but it's just a prop in their idol circus. Trump didn't just crack the Constitution. He took a sledgehammer to it, and we're still sweeping up the shards, while his disciples pretend it's holy ground. By Scott Young, aka Sinfamous Gamer.